Hello everyone, Sandrak here. So in this video, I'm going to be telling you why the Golden Apple Archipelago is called the Golden Apple Archipelago. So here is the answer you need to know. It actually looks like an apple when you draw the outline. Here you go, that's all the information I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching and have a nice day. The end. Now, of course, just kidding. So for this video, I'll be talking about three parts. The first part is where did these rocks come from? The second part is the entire storyline behind the 28 conches. Of course, I won't talk about the last four because those were left by Klee, Albedo, and the people we already know. And the last part is the long-term implication of the island. So this might be more than just a summer temporary event. Like this island might have more implications on future storylines and stuff like that, depending on how much they want to develop into this part of the lore. So first of all, why did these islands came? So the information is directly from Albedo, even though he took a guess there. However, it looks very much like anything Albedo guesses is correct at this point. So we'll take his guess word for word. Basically what happened was, essentially during the Archon War, there was two Archons or two gods that had control over Mondstadt. The Wolf of the North was kind of in control of Womendom and everything east of that, and the old Animal Archon kind of retreated to only Stormterror's lair. To keep his area under control, the Wolf of the North, basically Boreas, basically what he did was he covered the entire place in snow and ice. Essentially, he is cryo himself, so he can do that very easily. And instead, the Animal Archon was kind of just crawling inside old Mondstadt only. However, after Venti won the revolution against that, Boreas did not want to really fight for the throne of the Archon because he had no interest with human interactions. At least he thought he had no interest with human actions. So instead, he just kind of passed away and became one with the Force, if that makes sense. Basically, he infused his energy into Mondstadt, and now he's just living as sort of a ghost. But the first thing Venti did after he won the Archon War was to power up the winds to blow away all the snow within Mondstadt. So that included Pylos Peak, which is now Musk Rift. That was a story in patch 1.1, and also part of the rocks and large pieces of mountains that came alongside with the snow and wind. Snow that was blown off kind of landed in the area of the Golden Apple Archipelago, which is why the Golden Apple Archipelago is actually all upside down technically, with the top of the mountain heavier than the bottom of the mountain. If you look at it, it kind of looks like a backwards triangle. So that is why this is technically Mondstadt soil that we're on. Another very subtle hint is that whenever the battle BGM starts, battle background music starts, it is the battle BGM for Mondstadt. And is it a coincidence? I think not, because they did manage to take their time to completely write a new BGM for Dragonspine. So if it's not somewhere related to Mondstadt, I feel like they would have written a new one instead of using the old one. So this is also another subtle hint of why this is the area of Mondstadt. However, one thing to know, personally, I believe that Venti kind of did this in batches, which means not all the islands of the Golden Apple Archipelago came from the first cleaning of Mondstadt, so-called. And I will give my reasoning from this below. However, as for now, all you need to know is that these islands came when Venti was trying to clean up Mondstadt of all the stuff. Another thing to note is that Mondstadt is much flatter than Liyue, and that's one of the reasons, because Venti blew everything that's kind of tall and sticky off the ground. So secondly, the conches. So there are 32 conches in total, minus the 4 from the group of people that we know. There are 28. So I will be covering the entire story that these 28 together conveys. So the story can be split into 3 sections. First is the first inhabitants that landed on these islands. The second is the newcomers, which are pirates that came to these islands. And the third one is actually kind of funny. The third one is Dondon's father. So if you don't know, Dondon is a kid in Qingce village. If you talk to him, you will know that his father works under Beidou. So this might also implicate that his father, i.e. someone who works under Beidou, have reached the island, which means either Beidou would know of this place or Beidou has visited this place already as well. So with that said, let's get into the actual story. So for the first section, the first inhabitants came to these islands via an accident, i.e. a shipwreck. And basically what happened was their movements after they shipwrecked here was limited to the twinning isles because of the fog, and they couldn't really do much to manage to leave these islands. And to make things worse, the islands have very extreme tides, as we saw in the beginning of the thing. It was actually no mechanical, there was actually no mechanism under the water. That was just how extreme the tides can go. So near the end of this first section, before the pirates came, the first inhabitants of these islands, who were the customers of whatever ship that cracked here, are forced to live at the peak of the twinning isles, which is basically the only place they have to leave. And as a result, when you're looking at the conches near the twin isles, you'll see that the numbers ascend as the altitude ascend, which is actually why, because they keep ascending to higher altitudes, and they left conches behind that way, which is why the numbers actually ascend, which means the later the conches are recorded, the higher the altitude. So 2 more things to know regarding this period. The first thing is that they had a song that was spread among the group of people. I won't be writing the exact script of the song here. You can listen to that very easily within the conch. However, the song was basically talking about Chinsa village, although they had no idea that Liyue is a nation at that point. And the second thing to note is that the treasure, the family treasure or family heirloom that they're supposed to talk about, is actually a 4-star artifact. Now, of course, you might think 4-star artifact, like I get that every day, like 20 of them. But for normal common folks, especially for these, 4-star artifacts are considered to be a very rare piece already, because basically, according to Genshin's lore, 5-star artifacts are only used by gods and archons and stuff like that. For example, the circlet piece from the archaic Petra, that was actually used by Zhongli when he slaughtered all the archons in Liyue. That was the Mask War. So essentially, all the 5-star pieces are worn by either archons or really powerful people. So for a common folks, a 4-star artifact is already a treasure. However, the sad thing is they left it behind during one of the tides rising because it was too heavy to keep up, so they just abandoned it there, which led to the quest where you had to go dig up a chest and enter code to get the artifact within. Now, the other thing to talk about before this period is that they actually used the Broken Isles as sort of a signal. It was the island that makes music that they talk about in their description. So they use the Broken Isles to make sound whenever the tide is about to rise. So one person can warn the entire group that the tide is about to rise and everyone should settle to higher grounds to get ready. So that was the summary of the first section. The second section is when the pirates came. So the group of pirates is from Inazuma, although they might not be actually just pirates, because it was kind of vague on what their backstory is. So they might have more connections to Inazuma than just pirates. However, all we know is that this group of people, whether they're pirates or not, managed to smuggle the Magu Kinki, which is the robot samurai that ended up in the middle of the archipelago. They managed to smuggle him out of Inazuma, and as a result, they were being chased by Inazuma guards, and they kind of lost their direction and wandered into the mist, which is why they ended up on the Golden Apple Archipelago with a shipwreck. Hence the quest you had to find where you find the 2 pieces of the wrecked ship, and that was another quest. I don't want to spoil the actual quest if you haven't done it, but again, that's why there were 2 pieces of a wrecked ship. And they were saved by the inhabitants of this island. So the Magu Kinki actually served to help the inhabitants of the island with helitrons, which are very native here, and there tends to be a lot of them, as you can see yourself if you go to the island, helitrons everywhere. So the Magu Kinki had a very big source of offensive capabilities, which allowed the inhabitants to stay relatively safe from being enslaved or harmed by these helitrons. So as a result, the inhabitants built up the stone piles near the robot samurai. It's not a grave, it's actually a monument built by these people to honor the Magu Kinki. Now, within one of the conches, the child talks about a general and stuff like that. So the general is actually just Magukinki here. And you can confirm this by the fact that the child says he put a sweet flower on top of the monument to honor the general. And you can actually find a sweet flower on top of one of the three stone piles. However, it is dried already at this point, as that was quite a long time ago. So basically, after the pirates arrived, the old inhabitants of these archipelago heard about stories of Mondstadt of Inazuma, which led to the younger generation, which was adventurous at heart, wanted to leave this place. And finally, with the help of the girl in the conch, the girl's voice line in the conch, as well as one of the pirates, they were able to find a way out around the top right corner of the map, following the winds around 10 a.m. Again, I don't want to spoil that quest, but if you manage to catch up the conch where they talk about it, that will basically lead to a side quest. Another very interesting to note, before they tried the top right corner, they pretty much touch on all the other corners of the Golden Apple Archipelago, hence why the last 4 conches are found near the 4 edges of the archipelago. So we do not know where they actually went after this. However, one thing we do know is that there is actually a granny near Yao Guangshao who lives in a giant conch. And if you talk to her, she will tell you that her ancestors came here by that giant conch, which is why she's living inside it. This is kind of the only proof that we have that might be the end to this story. However, again, there's no solid connection between these two, so I'm just mentioning it. Alice also mentioned her during her Tibet travel guide, so that is basically why she was kind of sought as probably someone important here. Because after all, these Golden Apple Archipelago was discovered by Alice after the original inhabitants left. So finally, the last thing to talk about is the Malicious Isle, which I believe is actually Dvalin's temple. Now, if you go to the Malicious Isle, you'll find a Sealy, and I guess I will have to spoil the quest here. Basically, after you light up all the monuments and do everything for the Sealy, a time portal would open up, and you will go through the time portal, and you would end up in Mondstadt, somewhere exactly between the intersection of these 3 temples, and the Sealy would be able to find its home there. So this is my proof of why this place is considered Dvalin's temple, the entire Malicious Isle. First of all, it is the only place in the Golden Apple Archipelago with some sort of structure built into it. So as we can see, there was some sort of either temple or some sort of large human-made structure inside of it. And second of all, one thing for sure is that these are upside down. Hence, for 2 of the 4 elemental mechanism monument you have to activate, they're already upside down, and also the arc was upside down. By the way, you can find a chest on the upside down arc if you're interested. So basically, all these 3 out of the 4 winds in Mondstadt has the temple. And if you actually line them up, Wolf of the North, Lion of the South, Dragon of the East, and Falcon of the West, the rest 3 are within their relative location if we assume North is up on the map. However, if you actually put those 3 together and you try to place Dvalin's temple back to near where the Sealy is, however, it's on the water because the land got blown off by Barbados. So if you place it there, it actually perfectly line up that Dvalin's temple is to the east, and those 3 kind of form a cross pattern, basically like what happened with Breath of the Wild, the first 4 shrines. And their center was kind of somewhere near Windrise, not exactly, but somewhere near there. So essentially what I'm trying to say here is that basically after Dvalin became evil, got corrupted, Barbados thought it was probably a better thing to just kind of take her off the attention of the Mondstadt people by basically blowing his temple out of Mondstadt. And then it essentially landed as probably the second or one of the other few times where Barbados bothered blowing stuff here again into what he called the Haar Islands. So that is all the stuff I have regarding what is already in-game. The rest are speculations. One thing to note is that while you're in the Golden Apple Archipelago, you cannot see Celestia. Now, of course, that is not very important. However, lore-wise, I believe it does offer some capability for MiHoYo to potentially make a big story out of this in the end. Essentially, throughout all of Teyvat, we can pretty much see Celestia, and it will always appear somewhere in the middle, in somewhere like on top of one of the other regions. So with the relative size and direction of Celestia, we can pretty much tell where we are in Teyvat. And I believe they specifically did this to left out Celestia so that the people are not able to tell where the Golden Apple Archipelago is, which is why I'm believing why this archipelago we might have to visit again in the future for more quest lines. Because if it's not that important, they might as well just put the Golden Apple Archipelago on the map so that people can know where it is, or they can at least put Celestia back in so people know where it is. Because we do know where relatively it is. It is off the coast somewhere in Mondstadt, and given there is no direct mainland above Inazuma, it could very well be just north of Inazuma. So I believe that is all the information I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, please consider subscribing. Thank you and have a nice day.